My rival kissed me on prom night until I ended up naked in his bed, featuring Harry Potter x Cedric Diggory. My life was a mess, and my school year even messier than the last one, if it's even possible. I was okay with a criminal chasing me and then turning out to be my godfather, but this? Students snickering at me, wearing badges that flashed "Potter stinks" in glowing green. This was too much, and maybe it stung more because of him. Funny how fast the world can shift. Just a few months ago, I was standing beside Cedric Diggory at the Quidditch World Cup, both of us guests of the Weasleys, forced into polite conversation under Amos Diggory's booming pride and the general giddiness of being at the biggest match in the world. Back then, Cedric had just been another face to me. Hufflepuff's golden boy. Handsome, charming, polite, the kind of student professors adored and girls gushed about. And me? I was the boy who lived, dragged unwillingly back into the spotlight no matter how much I wanted to disappear. I didn't like him. Not really. Not then. Maybe it was unfair. I barely knew him, but Cedric was everything I wasn't. Effortlessly admired, the kind of person who seemed built for praise. And yet, when we talked, really talked, about Quidditch strategies, about what it was like to have people constantly expect greatness, I realized Cedric carried something heavy too. He didn't want the pedestal. Not really. He just got handed it. Like me. When Ireland won and the stadium erupted, we ended up hugging, laughing, breathless from the adrenaline and the noise and the fire whiskey. Amos had definitely slipped into our pumpkin juice. Our faces were close, closer than they should have been, and for a breath, maybe two, I almost leaned in. He blinked at me. I blinked at him. Then I pulled away so fast I nearly tipped over a butterbeer bottle. "What the hell am I doing?" I muttered, heat creeping up my neck. After that, things were awkward. We hadn't really spoken since, and now his eyes held the same unreadable expression as he looked at me across the Great Hall, standing in front of the Goblet of Fire. His name already called along with the two other champions, Fleur Delacour and Victor Crumb, the applause still ringing in the rafters. And then mine was called. Silence felt like a curse. The room froze. My feet felt rooted to the stone floor. I barely remember walking. Dumbledore's voice echoed. Someone grabbed my shoulder. The noise swelled again, this time uglier. Accusations, murmurs, snickers. Even Cedric's gaze shifted. Surprise, doubt, the same careful distance from the Quidditch final. Back when we were almost something and definitely nothing. I'd thought the worst was behind me. That maybe the third year's chaos was the peak of my Hogwarts nightmare curve. But no, this was worse. I was being called a cheat, a liar, a glory hound, and Cedric, he didn't say anything. He didn't need to. His silence carved deeper than the taunts. Later that evening, I caught sight of Ginny in the courtyard. Her eyes were fixed on the Beauxbatons carriage, or more specifically, on Fleur Delacour, who was practicing wand movements in the dusky light, her every motion graceful and practiced. Ginny looked like someone watching a star fall, stunned, quiet, transfixed. When Fleur finished, she barely glanced Ginny's way, only offering the slightest curve of a smile as she disappeared inside. But it made Ginny glow like someone had cast Lumos on her heart. I didn't say anything, just kept walking, the weight of the goblet's betrayal still heavy in my chest, and Cedric's unreadable stare still burned into the back of my mind. Because I wasn't sure what was worse, the fact that I hadn't put my name in, or that Cedric might actually believe I had. A few days later, Cedric and I were polite, maddeningly polite, whenever we passed each other. Like two diplomats forced to play nice in public, but behind our eyes, a quiet storm brewed. He hadn't accused me of cheating out loud. He didn't have to. But coming from him, after what almost happened at the World Cup. It stung more than I wanted to admit. The first task loomed like a dark cloud over the morning. My nerves buzzed under my skin as I stood on the sidelines, watching from under the tent flaps. Guinea was a few paces ahead, eyes wide, practically glowing as Fleur stepped into the arena. Fleur was all grace and precision, elegant wand movements, fluid distraction charms, her silvery hair whipping like a banner as she moved. The dragon snarled, but Fleur held her ground. When it was over, Fleur was breathing hard, a little rattled, but still every inch the goddess Guinea believed she was, and Guinea, to my absolute surprise, rushed forward. She shoved a flask of water into Fleur's hand like it was a sacred offering. Fleur blinked at her, a pause, then a soft "Merci," like it was meant just for Guinea and no one else. Then my name was called. The roar of Horntail hit like a wall of heat. I reminded myself, focus, use the broom, get the egg. A heartbeat later, I was airborne, weaving past spines and flame, every muscle taut. One sharp dive, a snatch, and the golden egg was in my arms. Cheers rang, but my eyes flicked to Cedric, waiting at the gate, jaw tight, greyish-blue eyes, unreadable. The moment the Swedish short snout lunged, my heart lurched. His dodge was too slow. Flame licked his side. I heard his shout, raw, real, and then the thud as he hit the ground. He rolled, pushed up, and still got the egg. But the crowd's cheer didn't erase the image in my head. As medics rushed him away, the badges and whispers suddenly meant nothing. All I could think was how I hadn't realized, until that moment, how much it hurt to watch Cedric in pain. The next day, I told myself I was just checking in, being polite, returning the courtesy, nothing more. Madame Pomfrey gave me a sharp look as I stepped into the hospital wing, but she didn't stop me. Cedric was propped up with pillows, shirtless, a bandage wrapped around his side, still too pale. "Come to see the vanquished foe, Harry," Cedric said, voice dry but a little raspy. I almost turned and walked out, but I didn't. "I came to see if you were all right." That got me a small, slight curve of his lips, and that did things to my heart. God, I was in trouble. 2 days later, I was walking back from Care of Magical Creatures when I caught sight of Guinea, alone, perched on a bench, twirling her wand in her fingers and watching the Beauxbatons carriage with the quiet intensity of someone trying not to look like they were watching at all. Then Fleur stepped out. She didn't glide this time, not like she did during the opening feast or the first task. She walked, brisk, purposeful, hair wind-tossed, cheeks flushed. She paused when she saw Guinea. You were at the tents," Fleur said, her English careful. "With the water for me?" Guinea blinked. Yeah, well, you looked like you needed it." Fleur studied her. "You are brave for someone so young." Guinea's chin tilted up slightly. "I'm not that young." Fleur smiled. Not the dazzling, formal kind she usually wore, but something smaller, more real. "No, I suppose not," she said, before brushing a strand of hair behind her ear. "Would you walk with me, just for a moment?" Guinea stood so fast she nearly knocked over her bag. I didn't interrupt. I just kept walking, heart a little lighter for reasons I couldn't quite explain. A few weeks later. Over the next few weeks, I came back to the hospital wing. Not every day, not at first, but enough. Enough for us to stop dancing around each other and start talking again. The bite in our words softened. Banter crept in. Laughter, even. I found out he wasn't dating Cho. Never had. She fancied him, sure, but he'd always seen her as a close friend. Everyone had just assumed. And when he mentioned how frustrating it was, he gave me this look, pointed, searching, that made my stomach twist. One evening, after someone had charmed a new batch of even filthier badges around school, I came in quieter than usual. I sat beside his bed, shoulders heavy. "Don't let them get to you, Harry," Cedric said. "You're stronger than they think." I stared at the bandages on his side, at the edge of a bruise peeking out. "I don't feel strong," I said. "Neither do I," he murmured. "But that night at the World Cup, you remember it?" I nodded. "You almost kissed me." "I didn't know what I was doing." "Neither did I. But I didn't forget. I haven't since." He looked at me like he was trying to decide something. Then he just whispered, "Don't disappear again, all right?" I nodded again, not knowing how else to react. This, whatever it was, or wasn't, between me and Cedric, was getting out of control. The Yule Bull was all anyone could talk about. I asked Parvati. She said yes with a grin that didn't quite reach her eyes. Everyone, of course, assumed Cedric, who had recovered now, would go with Cho. They weren't wrong, technically. "Just friends," he told me in passing, like that would ease the complicated knot twisting in my chest. It didn't. The Great Hall shimmered that night, transformed into something out of a dream. Parvati looked beautiful, all golden glitter, but my gaze kept drifting, across the dance floor, past twirling robes, to Cedric. He was magnetic, in dark green dress robes that made his eyes look stormy and deep. Cho at his side, elegant and poised. I told myself to stop looking. I didn't. Ginny arrived alone, in dusky blue. She looked stunning. There was a steel in her spine that hadn't been there before. Fleur had arrived with Roger Davies, radiant and distant. Ginny stared as Fleur floated past, but later I saw her shoulders tense when someone nearby made a crude comment about Vila, something about mind tricks and too much perfume. Ginny turned on them like fire. "She's got more talent and class than you'll ever have," she snapped, loud enough to hush nearby conversations. Fleur had been walking past again. She paused. "That was brave of you, Ginevra. It's Ginny." A rare smile from Fleur, small, genuine. "Perhaps one dance, Ginny?" They swayed together in quiet rhythm. Ginny was stiff at first, then laughing softly, the tiniest miracle. But I barely registered it. My eyes kept finding him. And then Cedric caught me looking. He tilted his head slightly, something curious and unreadable behind his smile. Later, Cho was pulled away by her friends. Cedric stood alone under the glowing garlands, scanning the crowd. My heart thudded. I turned to Parvati. "Mind if I cut away?" She raised a brow but waved me off. I crossed the floor, pulse hammering. "Mind if I cut in?" Cedric looked startled, then grinned. "Thought you'd never ask, Harry." We danced, a bit stiffly at first, too aware of the people watching. But then the room blurred, and it was just him. Warm hands, quiet breath, the space between us vanishing. The music slowed, the lights dimmed. He looked at me, eyes searching, full of something fierce and unspoken. Then, voice low and a little hoarse, he murmured, "I can't resist it anymore, Harry." And just like that, he kissed me. Right there, in the middle of the Great Hall. Not for long, but enough. Enough to be real. Enough to set the whole room off. The music faltered. A gasp swept through the crowd. Murmurs rose like wind. We pulled apart, blinking. Cho looked like someone had struck her. Not betrayal, but cracked open. Everyone's eyes were on us, on me. The chaos hit fast. Whispers, shouts, a professor's voice trying to calm things down. Cedric grabbed my wrist. "Come on." Someone bumped me hard. Pumpkin juice exploded across my dress robes. "Oh, for Merlin's sake!" Cedric, breathless, still gripping my sleeve, said, "Here, Harry, come with me. I've got this stuff from Diagon Alley. Brilliant for stains. My dorm's closer." Maybe he was looking for an escape. Maybe I was too. I followed him without a word, heart still hammering like a drum. A little while later, we reached the Hufflepuff dormitory, thankfully empty. Cedric dropped his cloak over a chair, then turned to me with a slightly forced casualness. "Right," he said, clearing his throat. "Shirt off, then?" His ears went red. I hesitated, then peeled the juice-soaked mess off my shoulders. Shivering in the cool air, suddenly hyper-aware of everything. My scar prickled. My heart thudded. I stood there, bare-chested, feeling awkward and exposed while Cedric rummaged in his trunk. He returned with a small glass bottle and a clean towel. "Diagon Alley. Mum swears by it." Dabbing at the fabric, he said lightly, "Great wizards, aren't we? Capable of dueling dragons, but still need a damn potion that works like a muggle stain remover." I let out a laugh, shaky but real. The tension didn't vanish entirely, but it melted at the edges. He hung my shirt near the fire, and we ended up sitting side by side on his small bunk, our shoulders brushing now and then. We talked about everything but the kiss. House elves, the weird smell in the dungeons, how everyone seemed to be sneaking into the kitchens these days, and somehow, the more we avoided it, the safer it felt. It was late, or early, when his head slumped against my shoulder. At first, I thought he was joking, but his breathing evened out, soft and slow. He'd fallen asleep. My heart did a strange little flip. He looked so peaceful, lips parted slightly, lashes resting against his cheek, vulnerable in a way he never showed when he was awake. I didn't want to move. I leaned back against the wall, letting the heat of him seep into me. It was comforting, too comforting. Eventually, sleep pulled at me too. A few hours later, I woke with a jolt. Pale morning light crept across the floor. Cedric was still asleep, curled slightly toward me. Panic twisted in my gut. What if someone saw us? Carefully, breath held, I eased his head onto his pillow. He murmured something unintelligible, but didn't stir. I grabbed my shirt, mostly dry, and crept from the room, and out of the common room like a ghost. My mind was a whirlwind. Confusion, guilt, fear, and underneath it all, a warmth I couldn't shake. The next morning, the prophet hit like a curse to the chest. Potter and Diggory, from public kiss to secret Hufflepuff tryst. Rita Skeeter's acid-dripped quill had outdone itself. The article painted me as a manipulative seducer, a boy who bedded, while Cedric was cast as an impressionable golden boy led astray. There were even embellished descriptions, whispers of moans, discarded robes, candles burning low. Someone had seen me. Someone wanted to see us burn. By breakfast, the school was a battlefield. The Potter Stinks badges had evolved, now pulsing with vile little slogans I refused to read twice. The Hufflepuff table was deathly silent. Slytherins roared with laughter. Some professors looked away when I passed. Others didn't bother hiding their disgust. And Amos Diggory, he exploded. Stormed into the castle like a man possessed, demanding to speak with Dumbledore, shouting in the entrance hall about moral corruption, perversion, and Potter's expulsion. His voice echoed off stone walls as if trying to scrub away his shame with volume. I couldn't face Cedric. I didn't know how. I'd run out of his room like a coward, and now he'd woken up to chaos. He tried to find me. I knew that. I heard Hermione say he'd been pacing outside Gryffindor Tower, looking pale and furious. But I stayed hidden in the dormitory, guilt gnawing at me like a dementor in my chest. When Ron finally burst in, clutching the paper, he just gasped. "Bloody hell, Harry! You slept there? What were you thinking?" I didn't answer. Hermione was pacing. "This is bad, Harry. They're implying things that could... Merlin's beard. If the Ministry takes notice, both of you could be expelled." "They won't. Dumbledore would make sure this stays under wraps. Besides, I didn't do anything," I said quietly. "That doesn't matter to people who want to believe the worst," she replied. "You need to talk to Cedric. Fix this together." Ron scratched his head. "Honestly, mate, It's mad, yeah, but I'm not angry, just blindsided. Hermione stopped. Ron? What? I am. It's not every day your best mate kisses Diggory in the middle of the bloody Great Hall, but if he's what makes Harry happy, he shrugged, then I'm not gonna ex him. That made something twist in my chest. A piece of guilt I didn't know I was still carrying cracked open. Thanks, I mumbled. Hermione came to sit beside me, her tone softening. You've both been under so much pressure, but hiding from him, from all this, isn't going to make it easier. I'm just scared I've already made it worse. Then make it better, she said firmly. Starting now. Ron grinned. Maybe wait until Skeeter's next article before you snog him again, though, yeah? I threw a cushion at his head. He ducked, and somehow the laugh that escaped my lips felt real. 2 days later. The library was nearly empty that evening, and that's why I was hiding there. But Fleur was here, curled up in a high-backed chair with a thick French text balanced on her knees, and Ginny hunched beside her, clearly not studying at all. Their voices were low, Fleur's accent curled around each word like a ribbon. And I did not know the word. Defense magic, yes, but not emotionally defensive, Fleur said with a little huff. Ginny smiled. It's a weird one. It means like you put up a wall when you think someone might hurt you. Fleur turned the page, but didn't look down. And you, Ginny? Do you do that? Put up walls? Ginny blinked, caught off guard. I used to, she said honestly, after everything with Riddle, but now I think it's braver to let people in. Fleur's eyes softened. You are very wise for someone your age, she murmured, then teasing, perhaps I should be the one learning from you. Ginny flushed, adorably. I mean, if you insist. They laughed together, and it wasn't loud, but it was easy, honest. Fleur reached across the narrow table and gently tapped Ginny's fingers. I'm glad you were at the ball, she said. It would not have been the same without our dance. Ginny's smile could have lit up the whole castle. A few days later. The air leading up to the second task was heavier than the lake itself. The castle buzzed with whispers, not excitement. Cedric and I hadn't exchanged a single word since that night. He looked awful, still handsome, still composed to the untrained eye, but if you knew where to look, the cracks were showing. His smile was hollow, his eyes shadowed. I saw him standing alone by the water's edge that morning, twisting the edge of his sleeve. Not once did he look my way, and me, I was barely holding it together. The guilt was suffocating. I'd run, and the world had pounced on him. When the signal sounded and we plunged into the lake, I thought only of survival. My main focus was to save Ron, until I saw him. Cedric was ahead, but struggling. His bubble charm flickered at the edges, and panic tightened his features as he tried to free Cho from the merfolk. I didn't think, I just moved. I helped get them loose, casting the charm I'd practiced 100 times. Cedric gave me a disbelieving look, something like heartbreak stitched into gratitude. We all broke the surface together, me, Ron, Cedric, and Cho. But the applause was muted. Suspicion hung thick, even here, above the water. Amos Diggory looked murderous. Cho looked at me with a blend of shock, pain, and maybe, just barely, thanks. But she clung to Cedric's side, her face unreadable. On the other side of the shore, Fleur was frantic. Gabrielle was safe, but she was shaking. Ginny, somehow already there, wrapped her in a warm towel, whispering something low and comforting. Fleur's hands found Ginny's arms, gripping her like she was the only solid thing left. Then, when a reporter dared to ask about certain students' morality, Fleur straightened, her hair like a silver flame. Judging someone's private heart, she said icily, is beneath civilized wizards. I saw the way Ginny looked at her. Fierce admiration, something warmer. Me, I just stood dripping by the judge's table, heart thudding like a war drum, knowing I'd only just started to make it right, and I wasn't even close. Later that evening, I was halfway down the dark corridor behind the library when I heard footsteps, fast, determined. "Harry?" Cedric's voice came sharp and low behind me. "We are talking, now!" I turned, already bracing myself. He looked wrecked. Not the usual polished, perfect Cedric, but exhausted, pale, eyes ringed with shadows, and furious. "There's nothing to say," I muttered, looking away. "I've ruined you. Just leave me alone." "Stop it!" The snap in his voice cracked something in me. "Yes, the prophet is vile. Yes, my father is making my life hell. And yes, I woke up alone and confused and saw that filth they printed. But you didn't ruin me, Harry. Skeeter did. The gossips did. What I want to know is why you left. Why you haven't said a word to me." My throat tightened. "I panicked," I admitted. "I saw the time. Thought about what people would say if they found us. It was already so bad after the kiss." "So you just left?" His voice dipped, hurt bleeding into every word. "Didn't think to, maybe, talk to me first?" "I'm sorry," I whispered, the shame coming in waves. "I was scared. I am scared of what this is doing to you, to your name, your future." He dragged a hand through his hair, breathing hard. "Harry, what happened in my dorm, that wasn't what they're saying. We talked. We fell asleep. It was the only peace I'd had all night after that kiss turned everything upside down." His voice softened. "What I feel for you, it isn't something I'm ashamed of. Not really. Not even if my father is. Not even if the prophet twists it. But I won't keep doing this if you're going to vanish every time it gets hard." His words hit with the weight of truth and heartache. I felt it too, Cedric," I said hoarsely. "It's just, this whole thing, it's a mess." He stepped closer, gaze steady. "Yeah," he said quietly, "it is. But maybe it's a mess we can figure out. Together. If you're done hiding." I nodded, just once, small but real. "I'm done." 2 days later. It was late, far past curfew, when Cedric met me in the astronomy tower. We hadn't planned it. I was just there, needing space. He just showed up. "Couldn't sleep either?" I asked. He shook his head. "Too many thoughts. Too many people who want to have opinions about my life." We sat side by side, backs against the stone, looking out over the dark grounds. Silence stretched between us, not uncomfortable. After a while, he said, "Do you think we'll always have to fight for this?" I didn't answer right away. "Probably, yeah." He nodded. "Still worth it?" A pause. "You know, the worst part of that morning wasn't the paper," he said. "It was waking up and realizing I'd finally let someone in, and they were gone." "I know," I said, throat tight. "It wasn't just the prophet. It was that night. The almost kiss at the World Cup. Then the ball. I just panicked." He turned to me then, the moonlight catching in his eyes. "You're here now." "Yeah," I said quietly. "I'm here." He reached for my hand, lacing our fingers together, and rested our joined hands on the space between us. We stayed like that, in the hush of the night, not needing to say more. A week later. The evening sky over the Quidditch pitch was thick with anticipation. Students buzzed with excitement and anxiety. Professors exchanged tense glances. The third and final task was moments away. Cedric's father's glare burned into him from the stands, sharp and deliberate. He didn't even blink when Dumbledore mentioned Cedric's name, just stared. Cho, sitting just below, gave us both a small, hesitant nod. A truce, maybe. An acknowledgement that the world had changed, that we had changed, and she didn't hate us for it. Cedric stood a few feet away, shoulders tense, eyes fixed on the shifting green wall before us. I wanted to reach out, say something, but what could I say that wouldn't feel small in the face of what we were about to face? If this is the end, I hope he knows I loved him. I love him, even if I didn't say it out loud. I wasn't sure when it had changed, when the ache in my chest became something deeper than fear or confusion. But it had, and now it felt as true as the wand in my holster. He looked at me, just briefly, and I nodded. No words, just the truth in the space between us. He nodded back. That was enough. The whistle blew. We entered the maze. It was a different world inside. Silent, shifting, dark. Twisting hedges, enchantments pulsing in the air. I lost Cedric in the first few minutes. Spells flashed. Creatures lunged. I fought back the panic clawing at my ribs and pressed on. It felt like hours later when I turned a corner and saw them. Cedric and Crum. Crum had Cedric pinned, wand pressed to his throat, his eyes vacant. Wrong. Stupefy. Crum crumpled. Cedric sat up slowly, breathing hard, covered in dirt and scratches. Was he... Imperious, I said grimly. Something's wrong, Cedric. This whole thing, it feels off. He nodded, wincing as he stood. His hand brushed mine for balance. We didn't say anything about it. We didn't have to. And then, through a gap in the hedge, gold glimmered. The cup. Cedric froze. Take it, Harry, he said. You saved me. Again. You deserve this more than anyone. I turned to him. His hair was matted, cheek bleeding, one sleeve torn. He looked real, bruised and brilliant and stubbornly kind. No, I said. We take it together. We're both Hogwarts champions. Let them say what they want, but we do this our way. I held out my hand. He stared at it, then at me, and slowly his expression shifted. His lips curved into a smile so bright, so unashamedly full of heart, that it knocked the breath out of me. Together, he said, and took my hand. We reached out, and the world spun. When the cup landed us safely back on the platform, clutching each other, triumphant and alive, the crowd erupted. Cheers, screams, explosions of colour. Joint Triwizard champions, Bagman bellowed. Hogwarts' finest. I barely heard it. Cedric was laughing, breathless, holding on to me like he didn't quite believe we'd made it. In the stands, Amos Diggory stood. He looked stunned, stone still. His gaze landed on Cedric, his bruised, glowing, victorious son, and something in his face cracked. Just a little. A flicker. Not quite approval, not quite acceptance, but something softer than scorn. Later, the noise dulled. The crowd drifted. The celebration wore thin. Cedric tugged me aside behind a cluster of tents, away from the noise, away from eyes. I need to say something, he said, and I don't want it lost in the noise. I turned to him. His hands were trembling, but his voice was steady. Harry, despite my father, despite Skeeter, despite everything, I meant it. All of it. I swallowed. Me too, I said quietly. But what now? Your father? My father will have to deal with it, he said, sharp but not cruel. I'm not a child. He looked at me, full of something fierce and tender. What happened after the ball? It wasn't what Skeeter said, but it wasn't nothing either. That moment, falling asleep beside you, it mattered. My throat tightened. He stepped closer. What matters is us, and I forgive you for running that morning. I think I understand. You were scared. But, Harry, no more running. I can't. I won't be your secret. I need to know, is this... He gestured, not just to me, but to the space between us, to the truth we'd been dancing around. Worth it to you? Is it worth fighting through all of this? I looked at him, at the bruise blooming on his cheekbone, at the vulnerability stitched into his voice, at the hope held back like a breath, and I knew. Yes, I said, clear and certain. It is. He didn't speak, just stepped forward, closing the space between us, and kissed me. It wasn't frantic or hidden or stolen in the shadows. It was real, steady and open, a promise in the quiet aftermath. When we pulled back, I leaned my forehead against his. "Together?" I whispered. His answer was soft, sure. "Always." A few weeks later, the end of the year crept in, not with a bang, but with a soft sort of exhale, as if Hogwarts itself was letting out the breath it had been holding. The scandal, as everyone had dubbed it, had burned bright and fast, but it was old news now. The prophet moved on, the whispers dulled, new gossip had taken its place. Professor Trelawney had fainted dramatically during divination exams, again. Someone had enchanted the suits of armor to sing Celestina Warbeck, and a fourth year had sprouted feathers during a transfiguration mishap. And Cedric and I, we were figuring it out. It wasn't always easy. His father still refused to meet my eyes at the platform, still spoke in clipped tones whenever Cedric mentioned me. But Cedric didn't shrink from it. He didn't let it break him, or us. We walked the halls together now, not with grand displays or defiance, but with quiet, certain steps. Sometimes he'd bump my shoulder when no one was looking. Sometimes I'd sneak him a smile across the great hall, and he'd mouth, "Hi, Potter," like it was our own secret language. Now, the Hogwarts Express rattled on its tracks, and students bustled through the platform. Fleur slipped through the crowd to where Ginny was struggling with her trunk. Sunlight caught the shine in her hair and the flush on her cheeks as she pressed something small and silver into Ginny's hand. A charm shaped like a lily, delicate as spun glass. "For luck," Fleur said, her accent softening the words. "And for new beginnings. I will be here, at Beauxbatons Annex in London, studying for charms mastery. But," her gaze lingered gently, "mostly to be near certain promising magical talents." She arched her brows. Teasing, and Ginny went pink to the roots. Ginny grinned, turning the charm over in her palm, eyes bright. "Does this mean I get to show you all of my favorite corners of Diagon Alley?" Fleur's laughter was music. "I would like nothing more." She leaned in, brushing a feather-light kiss against Ginny's cheek. "Write me anyway, even if we're only a fleur away." Ginny swallowed, but her voice was steady. "You couldn't stop me if you tried." This time, her smile lingered long after Fleur had slipped back into the crowd. Moments later, I sat in the usual compartment with Ron and Hermione, the afternoon sun slanting golden through the windows. Cedric slid the door open, gave Ron a nod, Hermione a polite smile, and without a word, dropped into the seat beside me. Then, bold and easy, he took my hand and laced our fingers together. Ron looked over and grinned. "Finally," he said. "Now maybe people can stop acting like it's the end of the bloody world." Hermione's smile was gentler, real, a little teary even. "I'm just glad you're both okay," she said softly. "Really okay." Cedric leaned close to my ear and murmured, "So, Harry, think your summer can handle a bit more scandal after our rather eventful year?" I laughed, full and free, and squeezed his hand. "With you? After surviving dragons, Skeeter, and your dad's death glare? Definitely worth it." The train rushed forward, and I let myself lean back, shoulder to shoulder with him. The path ahead wasn't simple. The echoes of everything we'd endured would still be there. But so were we, and this time, we wouldn't run. We'd face it, together. The end. Who do you like more with Harry, Draco, or Cedric? Thanks for watching. Subscribe to become a part of our Rainbow Force, and consider joining our membership for early access and exclusive content. Stay wholesome.